Number three. Number three. Three is a winner. Sorry about that. I have no idea what happened to two. Great. Three seems to be always the perfect number. Hopefully I'll finish 3 minutes in advance. Good morning again, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today, being invited as an external speaker to this Office of Pharmaceutical Quality Symposium. I want to share with you our experience with this research project with the US FDA, and most of all, our experience of continuous manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. The first statement I want to make is that when we talk about continuous manufacturing of pharmaceutical, we mean improving access to safer and higher quality medication to patients. This morning, we have seen case study of continuous manufacturing of drug substance, as well as case study of continuous manufacturing of drug products. Now I'm going to show you case study on data from a pilot plant system that integrates chemical operation, so drug substance formation and formulation, drug product, in one single continuous manufacturing line with modular unit operation, meaning that this unit operation can be interchanged one another to make this applicable to many different drugs. At the end of this talk, I would hope that the takeaway that you have would be that the integration, physical integration of unit operation in continuous manufacturing is key. This integration provides high degree of control over product quality. And finally, that new process technology, specifically designed for continuous manufacturing, facilitate integration and have a major impact in the final product quality. There are different continuous manufacturing solutions, as we heard already this morning, and the company has used different approaches which basically match the risk tolerance with reward. You can have a continuous manufacturing process as a single unit operation, or we might have a integrated multiple step in the synthesis of a drug substance operation, or integrated step into drug product systems. And finally, what we call here, point C on these slides, it's end-to-end continuous manufacturing of pharmaceuticals, where the drug substance world and drug product world are integrated in one single system. And that's what I'm going to focus today about. And this is our pipeline vision of end-to-end continuous manufacturing. We're basically going to introduce continuous raw material from one end of the process and continuously collecting drug product at the other end of the system with the process that runs 24/7 under fully automated control. There is continuous flow of material from beginning to the end. We are not isolating intermediate of API any longer, but these are formed and made in situ. And we use a system approach and an integrated control strategy to optimize the process as a whole, not just a single unit operation. Although this vision of the continuous pipeline might seem a rigid process that can be applied to one single drug, it's actually the result of an integration of multiple unit operation, and this unit operation can be interchanged. You can ship from different reactor design to different way to make a dosage form, and these allow the applicability of continuous manufacturing as a platform to many different compounds. So now I want to show you how we put this theory into practice. So this is the top view of our continuous manufacturing facility floor plan. The continuous manufacturing system is contained within those rectangular boxes, which are basically specific containment area. The process starts with the dissolution enclosure, where we feed the raw material, prepare the pre-reaction mixture, then it goes into continuous reaction, continuous crystallization, continuous filtration, continuous drying, then goes into the EMC section, which stands for Extrusion Molten Coating. It's a new platform we use to produce coated tablets. And then we also have a solvent recovery station. So we take the solvent from the process, we separate those solvents, we clean them, and we use in a closed loop back into the process. So now let's zoom in a little bit more into the process and show you the different unit operation. So again, as I said, initially there's a dissolution vessel where we prepare the pre-reaction mixture. Then this goes into a continuous clarification system that allow us to remove solid particles from raw material and feed the reaction with the pure pre-reaction mixture. R1 is a plug flow reactor, which is integrated with the 5-stage CSTR, where we have reaction and crystallization combined. And then post the final crystallization of the API, we perform continuous filtration. We then resuspend the wet cake to be fed into a high-shear mixer vessel where we perform additional manipulation on the particle size distribution of the API if needed. And then this goes into a continuous dryer. And from the continuous dry, then the dry API is fed into the extrusion molding coating for the coated tablets. We also have implemented process analytical technology in specific critical point of this process. And the first two is an implementation of React-IR into the final crystallization of the API and into the resuspension of the product post-filtration. These give critical information about the purity of the final API, and I will show you an example later on. Then we have an FBRM into the high-shear mixer to monitor real-time the chord length distribution of the active, which we use to translate this in particle size distribution. And then post-dryer, we have an NIR, a Raman, and a particle size analyzer to measure real-time the residual solvent content of the API, the crystal form, and the particle size distribution. And finally, into the drug product platform, we use again NIR, this case for content uniformity, and Raman for the final crystal form of the drug. We also have a model that actually is used to predict the dissolution of the final product. We are currently initiating the development of a traceability model for the raw material, the product, and the impurities that are formed. And this is very important to develop an effective control strategy, including the diversion of non-conforming material. Now, in order to use this effectively, we had to study the residence time across the entire systems. So for each single unit operation, we did this study, which is a combination of a plug flow model, but also residence time distribution, because some of these processes are vessels. So we heard before there is back mixing, so we need to understand the residence time distribution. And as you can see from these slides, the overall average residence time from this process is 30 hours, from beginning to the end. Let me pause here 1 second. So it's not atypical for any specific drug manufacturing, including the API, that it can take between like 200, 300 days lead time. We're actually working on a project right now that requires 2 years lead time just for the API, 2 years. So imagine to move from 2 years to 30 hours. This is a change in transformation, the way we develop and deliver medication to patients. Especially when we think about case of national security, we need to produce drug very quickly for specific pandemic disease, or when we think about producing a drug that are in shortages, this is a very important proposition. How the control architecture look like. So the core here we're using the Delta V software, which is directly connected with the process, as well as the PAT interface. So the spectroscopic data for the PAT are also run real time with the model, which basically convert this data into meaningful information related to the quality attribute of the product. And we are using, obviously, this control strategy for making real-time correction on the process to mitigate any disturbances that can arise, as well as for the real-time release concept of the final product without going to the QC lab. So this is how the system looks like. That's a picture of our end-to-end continuous system. It's very compact. It's about a large conference room. It's 30 meters square, can produce up to 30 tons of API a year on a continuous basis. Now, what I want to do is show you a video so you can see how actually the process works. It's a 2 minutes video. So I hope this gave you an idea how actually the system works, and the new process technology has been developed that integrated into these systems. So because of the time limitation, I won't be able to walk you through each single unit operation, but I choose 3 specific examples that fit with the learning objective of today. So the first example is about the integration of the feeding operation and the solution in the first step, and I show you basically a control strategy, how we maintain a critical material attribute. So we're talking here feeding 2 reactant A and B and the solvent into the dissolution vessel. And the reactant B to A mass ratio, it's a critical material attribute. Unless this is maintained, there is a negative effect into the process, and I will show you later in the presentation. But these slides show how over almost 70 hours of operation, we have a very good matching between this mass ratio and this set point. How we did that? We did that through basically building a reactant A, reactant B, solvent 1 ratio controller. This ratio controller is built on the level in the dissolution vessel. Every time the level changes, there is an input change on the instantaneous rate of the reactant A. And this reactant A now is in ratio control with the reactant B and solvent 1. So we are able to control this on a real-time basis during operation. Second example I want to show you is an example about the integration of the continuous filtration, the final crystallization of the API, and this resuspension in the resuspension vessel. Let me start by describing you how this continuous filtration system works. This is one of the new technology. So basically a rotating porous disc. The slurry is delivered on the surface of the disc. We make a nice distribution, so we form a very thin wet cake. This allows effective removal of the impurity, even those impurities are difficult to remove. Then we have vacuum filtration, so we remove the mother liquor. There are different washing areas, so we can use different solvent to wash the wet cake. And then there is a collection point at the end of, at the center of the technology that allows delivering of the wet cake to the next step. We talked about cleaning before. Here we also have a cleaning in place of the filtration system. So there is a specific area of the filter that gets washed with solvent or water if you need to, such that we don't need to stop our filtration system during the continuous operation, but we can continue effectively the operation. So now talking about quality, I want to show you our implementation of the REACT-IR pre and post filtration. So we use here REACT-IR in the final crystallization of the API to track and measure a concentration of a key impurity, which we call here impurity A, which is the most difficult to remove and has the tighter specification. This plot shows impurity A versus the time of operation, and you can see that the prediction of the REACT-IR match pretty well the HPLC data, even during a dynamic condition. You see that in the first 30 hours, the concentration doesn't change. But then after this, we show here a case when the concentration of this impurity increases over time due to a lower reactant B that's fed into the process. These are very useful real-time information, because by tracking and changing this impurity profile, we know how much solvent we need to use in the filter to clean this material. And we have obviously performed the DOV experiment to implement this. Post-filtration now, we want to demonstrate that our API has been purified and meet the specification. So what we're showing here, we are tracking the same impurity, impurity A versus time, but we are matching the data produced by the REACT-IR into the suspension vessel with the purity of the dry powder from the dryer. And you can see here that we have a pretty good match between the two. Over the first 63 hours, the material in specification, but again, I'm showing you a case in which we show dynamic behavior with the impurity is increasing due to, in this case, a clogging of the filter, and we had to include a corrective action. And then when the impurity goes down, even the prediction goes down at the same time. And the point to make here is that there is almost between 5.5 hours lag time between the resuspension vessel and the dryer. So by doing this measurement in the resuspension vessel, we can predict what will be the purity of the final API into the dryer. The last example, it's about our extrusion molding coating. So our an example here of a new technology I want to show you that combine, we call it 3-in-1 drug manufacturing process, because it takes extrusion characteristics, injection molding and injection coating, and integrated this in one platform for coated tablets. So we have one stream of the API coming from a vacuum conveyor from the drug substance manufacturing line. This feeds a specific gravimetric feeder. And then we have a second gravimetric feeder which contains the excipient mixture. All is fed into the twin extrusion barrel when the mixing occurs. and then goes into a transfer manifold where we perform PAT measurement for content uniformity and crystal form, and then is injected into these molds. And the throughput of the machine that we have right now can go from roughly 300 tablets to 5,000 tablets an hour. We have been able to produce many different tablets with many different shapes. These tablets can be also embossed or adding partition line, and we're working with a specific product and met all the required quality specification defined by the US Pharmacopeia. The last things I want to show you now, I want to show you some integrated results. So up to now, I show you some snapshot across the system. Now let me show you some set of integrated results that indicated how changing a specific critical material attribute can have an impact to the final product quality. I know this is a busy slide, but let's just focus on the pre-reaction mixture on the water. So this is a case in which we don't have a water absorption in the raw material. Therefore, the reactant B to A ratio, it's maintained over time. Therefore, the reaction mixture performs well and the reaction condition as well. The impurity are constant, and these allow us to produce API within the specification in terms of purity from the dry powder, as well as then producing tablets which meet the API assay and impurity specification, the dissolution specification, as well as the weight variation. Contrarily, if there is absorption of water into the pre-reaction mixture, as you can see here, it's about 3%, then we have a negative effect on the reactant B to reactant A ratio unless we correct this real time. These allow an increase in the impurity generation, as you can see from the last chart, and also the generation of a specific impurity which clog the filtration system. Therefore, now our material is going out of specification in terms of impurity profile and in terms of residual solvent. That's to show you how it's important to maintain this critical material attribute characteristic at the beginning of the process to make sure that you have a product with the high quality at the end. Now let me just conclude just by saying that focus on some of the advantages of end-to-end continuous manufacturing. Again, these are modularized plant, miniaturized in terms of footprint, and also the capital investment is needed to implement there. They are fully automated with built-in quality, so allow you for high quality assurance, and a very fast production time. This really allows production on demand, which is very important for producing a specific pharmaceutical. In terms of learning objective for today, as I stressed at the beginning, I think I want to reiterate the end-to-end continuous manufacturing, and this integration is advantageous, allowed to produce pharmaceutical on demand. The integration is really the key in continuous manufacturing because allow you to have a higher degree of the control of the product quality because you can do feed-forward control, feedback control, so you have multiple and simultaneous control action on your process. And then the use of new technology, specifically designed for continuous manufacturing, not re-engineering what we have used for the last 30 years, as a specific benefit into the integration and the final performance of the product. I would like to finally thank all my team who has been working very hard to set the process to this stage, and also all the FDA colleagues for the contribution with this project. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any question in the panel later on.
All right, and as Salvatore mentioned, we're about to go into the panel.